Welcome back. You're still watching Daybreak on this 13th day of June 2023, and I'm in studio with stakeholders from three key areas: QS, construction project manager, and an architect. They are all here to help us understand what it takes to put up a structure. And I just wanted to remind you of why we're here. Of course, we know that there's that finance bill. I want us to take a look at some of those details that are contained in that bill that has gone through a lot of public participation. And of course, we know that a report has been prepared to be tabled this afternoon. We're talking about 3% of basic pay, which is the amount that is to be contributed by the employer and employee at a maximum of 5,000 shillings. Of course, that is being said that there's a concession to reduce it to 1.5% from 3%. And of course, some of the benefits according to the bill is that you can purchase a home once you contribute, or you may withdraw your contribution at 7 years or once you retire, whichever is earlier. And you may also transfer to another beneficiary, whether it's a family member or someone totally unrelated. And the cash withdrawals, according to the bill as it is so far, is that they'll be taxed at the expiry of that time. Then there's some other issues that are affecting the construction sector being introduced in the finance bill of 2023, an excise duty of 20% or 1.5 shillings per kilogram of imported cement, imported furniture, a 30% excise duty, imported paints and varnishes, excise duty of 15% being proposed, and imported clinker, which is a component of cement, that is a rate of 10% of export investment promotion levy being introduced in the finance bill. And of course, we're waiting to see what changes will have been recommended by the Finance and Planning Committee, and also what will come before the House at a time that the opposition thinks that that bill should be rejected in its totality. And we'll get to the question of what those proposals do to the cost of building. But I wanted to understand exactly your roles at the construction sector, because we've heard of fundis, we've heard of plumbers, mtu wa mkono, we've heard of contractors, we've heard of QS, we've heard of, well, QS is quantity surveyor. I said something else the other day. We've heard of an architect, and you've also heard of construction project managers that Nahashon now here is. What exactly do you do, Nahashon, when you come to the site?
Thank you. As I explained that, if you look at democracies ahead of us that have added additional steel to the built environment, they introduced professional management of projects that a lot of us in the public sector lack. We don't run our projects professionally managed. Now, our higher learning education brought in the project manager. And if you look at some countries, South Africa has even regulation on project management. What we do is very simple. We come in the design stage, and our work is management of project, the coordination of projects. So at the design stage of a project, we coordinate with the consultants. So we work with the architects, with the engineers, with the quantity surveyors, with the planners, all consultants that are working on a project, we coordinate them, chairing those meetings, looking at those drawings, working with them to achieve the client's dream. So we coordinate the consultants in the design stage until we reach the tender stage. Identify a contractor with the entire team. All right? When you move to construction, again, we manage the projects with the consultants. So now we have brought in a contractor to the team now. Again, we manage the project with the contractor. As I said, we are concerned with 10 components of management of a project, but people know of 3: time, cost, and quality. So if we go to site and the contractor wants evaluation, and Jennifer could be delaying in issuing evaluation of the works, our work is to work with Jennifer and say, hey, we need to do evaluation today. Send it to the architects for certificate. Send it to the client for payment. So we coordinate that entire team of consultants and the contractor, managing those components of a project until we realize the dream of the client at the end of the project. So before, the architect used to take the lead role. So there was no one putting the team together. Our work is to put the team together, manage the project on behalf of the client from design stage to completion. Those 3 components are the most key. Otherwise, we also do communication management. There is resource procurement. Are we importing finishes or not? There's a lot of work we're involved in with this team from design stage to completion. Yes.
So the clients appoint you?
The clients appoint us.
Then mobilize all these other people?
Yes.
Then how different is your role from that of a contractor? So that, because what you've said makes a lot of sense, especially in public procurement. But when it's an individual who is putting up a private house, how do you justify the two roles, contractor and yourself?
I will explain. You know, when a client is putting up a house, the client can be a lay person. So in some projects like us, we were the first the clients appoint. So we are sold for the client's dream. All right? Now, the client could be very busy. So we take the role of a client representative early on in the project. The client wants to put on a house. All right? Now, once we have sold for the idea, okay, this is the house I have 15 million and put on a house in Kitengela. What do you have? This is what I have. This is the client brief. Then you bring Florence and say, Florence, this is what the client wants. This is the brief. She designs. We bring in Jennifer to cost. We bring in the engineers. We begin to work with this client. So the client doesn't have to be here every time. Could be busy. Periodically, we give those reports to the client. So we take the role of a client rep. When we go to construction, at the tender stage, we finish design, we've costed, we invite tenders, we have appointed a contractor. We are not contractors. We are all consultants here. The contractor is the one going to be implementing this project. Again, at that stage, we will manage the project with these consultants, oversee the project from groundbreaking to completion of that project. So the contractor is the implementer. We are consulting and we are managing the project. Now, let me point out this, that the contractor actually may have someone like myself in his team. Because the things that concern the client, developer, concerns the contractor. The contractor also want to finish on budget, with the quality and with the cost. So the contractor may have my classmate in his team to help him manage the project on that side. I'm managing it on behalf of the client. The contractor may have someone like me in his team managing that project for him because he also wants to finish on budget and costs and achieve the quality required. And
I don't think there's anyone who wants to really finish on budget more than the client.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
Jennifer, when you look at all that, what would you say is the contribution of consultants' fees to, because you say 10%, but it sounds like it's actually more than that. And a private developer, whether you're putting up a family home or whatever you're putting up, would want to minimize those costs as much as possible. I'm sure you've witnessed this in the field. So how do you deal with that, especially as a Kenyan who just wants a house?
To minimize the professional fees. You don't want to have a shortcut. Go the full swing. Don't look at saving the 10%, but work with a consultant to see where else you can save. Remember, there's another 90%. You could reduce in the labor component by being efficient, you know. How
do you do that when already you've contracted a contractor?
The timelines, if they finish before time, there could be a rebate. Reduce that. Remember, if you prolong this project, it's going to be more expensive. So just containing that 90% is in itself a very big saving, right? Also, the choice of materials. You could reduce that 90% component by changing and tweaking a little these materials you're using. Instead of using stones, for example, you could use bricks in the internal walls. Being creative, things you as a client might not, think about.
Yet, Florence, when you're engaging a contractor, they'll come and tell you that to put up your house based on the estimates by the QS, this is much you need for material, this is the much that we want for labor, and they tell you that we want to implement this, to work on this in the next, say, how many weeks or is it months? So you agree on a contract based on some timeline. So even if you want to be efficient, there's no benefit to the client because you've already agreed.
I think by the time, actually what Jennifer is trying to say is that by the time you're signing that contract, you have already have the input of professionals in that particular contract. Because at the beginning, what happens is that as the as the project is being designed, and you have this back and forth, because they'll end up doing what you call a cost estimate at the start, right? And then the client says, my budget is too high. This budget is way beyond, this particular cost estimate is beyond my budget, so let's bring it down a bit. So you'll have done what you normally call value engineering, that you try and minimize costs where you can in terms of construction, replace materials where you think you can replace materials, what we normally call down-speccing, which means you're reducing the specification to something that's, that suits the budget that the client has at the end of the day. This cannot happen when they're doing it with a fundi, because what the fundi wants to do is to make as much money as possible from the client. But you as a consultant, you're able to value engineer, make sure that the project actually comes out as nice as it can come out, but at the cost and at the budget of the client. So the client having us in their team is actually good. Now, I think we also need to look at construction cost over and beyond just the cost of construction or even that particular unit. Remember, this space is supposed to be habitable. It's supposed to look nice. It's supposed to be airy, nice and fresh and looking good. You cannot do that when you have a fundi who tells you today, let's demolish here, let's build here, and so on and so forth. When you have consultants on your side, you're able to foresee any challenges that there may be with the particular project that you're handling at that particular point. I want to bring it back to the issue of even the sale of those units or even occupation of those units. You'll find that a project that has had consultants involved will actually sell out quicker, will sell faster, you get your return on investment because you can actually price it quite well for the market. But a project that does not have consultants will always have issues because it may not be functional. So you have this high turnover, maybe if you're renting it out, you have high turnover of tenants, you have a high turnover of even getting it sold. So we need to look at the totality of it at the end of the day, and having professionals on board does not necessarily equate to expense. It equates to efficiency and it equates to quality at the end of the day. And there's this, if you're talking about time, quality, and cost at the end of the day, you're able to save on all those three fronts as much as possible when you have consultants on board.
So something you've asked that I want to just in a minute jump in. You've asked, you've given a contractor 12 months. So if he saves time that you agreed, how do you benefit? I mean, you do, because if he works that project within 8 months, you begin to get, you pay back your money early. So even if you're given a contractor work of 2 years, he needs to finish early. If you're borrowing financially, you're saving on finance costs if you finish early. So there is a ton, the benefits of having a registered, experienced professional consultants are eternal for a client. These consultants must be there. If you don't have them, you will run into problems. Disputes, we don't talk about disputes. Yeah.
Let me add one thing.
Okay.
Construction also goes with time, as you're talking about it. And one of the greatest costs that clients end up incurring is the issue of labor costs. And labor is calculated by the day. So it is a very direct benefit when you use less time to build. So if you have less time, you're saving money on those particular days that the contractor then does not have to be on site during those particular days. On many fronts, not only labor, even preliminaries, maybe the cost of electricity, the cost of water, the cost of what you call normal overheads that would be incurred during construction. So if they finish months early, you're saving a great deal of cost at that particular point, and you need consultants to be with you for you to be able to determine those things because of our experience, and that we're bringing in professional input at the end of the day. Okay,
let's talk about affordable housing, and of course this is a program that has been mentioned as early as 2017 when President Uhuru Kenyatta at that time spoke of the big 4 things that he had Kenyans calling for, and at a time that cost of living continues to rise, cost of construction materials continues to rise, and of course cost of consultation services continues to rise. How do we make this affordable? I haven't seen your previous versions or editions of the document that you quoted there, but I would imagine that it's also rising.
Definitely, costs are rising. So how do you make construction affordable? The government must step in a big way. Like I mentioned earlier, finance is a big issue. Finance is a very big issue in this affordability of the houses. Now that the housing levy, if structured well, is going to be in place, it's going to reduce the cost of financing by, say, even 15–14%, the market rate. So that is transferred to the client. Further, the government should be able to afford to do infrastructure for these projects. Right now, it's being lumped onto the private sector to build the roads in that estate or the development they're doing, to bring water, to bring power, which is the role of the government. Now that they have financing, I hope they'll responsibly channel it that way, so that from the lowest costed house, right now the affordable houses, the social housing, going for about 1 million, 1.2, we're likely to see it go below there to the 800s and 700s. It's going to be more accessible to many. Yeah. But you have to remember, this affordability, the houses are only affordable so long as they are mass produced. Okay. It's a mass production project by the government for the population to meet the housing deficit of, say, 200,000 houses, or thereabouts. That cannot be felt by an individual doing one house in Kisumu or Machakos and all that.
Right.
It's only when 7,000 houses are dumped with the right technology in one go.
Does anything change on the materials for construction? Are there cheaper technologies, or you still have to use the stones?
No, we don't have to. We are not obligated to. There's technology which is globally accepted, and that reduces time of the construction and the methodology and the kind of materials. The perception is also changing.
Right.
That a house that is built of stone is not necessarily the only option of a permanent house. People are going EPS, which is being done by the NHC and the like.
What is EPS?
EPS is
expanded
polystyrene systems. You've seen Nyayo Estate, for example, was done using concrete walls, thinner walls, an alternative to stones, natural stones. Yeah, and
they're still safe.
They're very safe. They build faster, and they have all qualities even better than the building stones. There's all that technology, including even you can put gypsum in some walls which are not as external and exposed to weather. So that cultural perception is what needs to be emphasized and sold more for acceptability.
And those materials, EPS, they are cheaper than stones?
They are cheaper when you apply technology, because you'll be able to finish a house in, say, 15 days away. Yes, whereas when you're doing the stone walls, you're talking about 3 months and 4 months and all that. So you can already see the translated costs, in the sales price and the construction.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What do you have to say about that? About improving the affordability of housing, and how will that even translate to now private developers of private homes or buildings can now start feeling the impact of that injection in the economy?
Sam, look, I do not think we will achieve affordable housing within the market and profit model. It's not possible. Learning is only exhibited with changing behavior. That's when someone has learned. This administration is not learning from the past administration's mistakes. For me, that is my major concern. They're repeating them. You cannot achieve affordable housing within the profit and market model that we have, where you say, investor, you build within the market parameters of willing buyer, willing seller of materials, will buy from you and make it cheaper. It will not be affordable. For me, that is my major concern. Affordable housing has to go to another different program, probably non-profit. Because housing at the bottom of the triangle that we are looking at under Article 43, for me, at that bottom level, it's a demand issue. It's not a supply issue. Because you can have houses next to Kibera, and probably they're there right now, that are empty, but they can't afford to go into those houses. So it's a demand issue. You will not achieve that demand issue by supplying. It has to be all a different model of not the market and profit model. That will not work for us. We will build, and I've always said, the issue is that we will not build. We will build some houses, but will they be affordable? Personally, I doubt so. Because, as you've said, we are increasing taxes in this environment. You talk about clinker, 10% import cost. In the market, we have always a 40% deficit on clinker. We import 60% of that from Egypt, always. That taxation has gone up. We woke up, started the year with CGT, capital gain tax, up from 5% to 15%. I mean, we are increasing taxes in this environment. It means the cost of construction, as QS Jennifer is saying, is rising. You will not achieve that affordable housing within that model. It has to be on a different pedestal. Technology is good. But sometimes the issue you have with technologies that are coming in this country, number one is perception of culture. People, and that culture is informed because we have security issues in this country. So you can't wish away that. But also just the undertaking from this technology, people that I will save you 3 months. Sometimes they can't give you it. Because if I'm going to expend 20% more, 30% more, give me an undertaking that you'll save me 3 months. That's when it makes sense for me. But if I can't get an undertaking from that company, I'll go for brick and mortar and finish within the 12 months I'd started. Otherwise, if I'm going to spend more, because these technologies are expensive, the only way you're going to cut back on it is when they give you time saving. And I need an undertaking from you that you're going to give me this, the 3 months, 4 months time savings. That only makes sense. Now, a number of them do not do that. So what do people end up doing? Go for the brick and mortar, the conventional way.
Interesting. Let's take a look at the feedback that Kenyans are sharing with us via Citizen TV Kenya. Sam Gituku, the hashtag to use is daybreak. And you can raise your questions with us. The experts are here, they respond to them. Let me begin with the engineer Lazaro. Building houses can't be our top priority at the moment. I think this is a misplaced policy. Government should concentrate in arresting the rising cost of living and to investors, plus to create a good environment for local entrepreneurship. All right, Sir Nixon Dugire, we've experienced many cases of buildings falling down, some within towns and very close to construction enforcement offices. I really hope this will be taken care of should the construction of affordable houses take off. Bobo Tieno, the Finance Bill 2023 will be a make or break if President William Ruto, for President William Ruto, especially on the contested issues arising on the housing levy. J.M. Musoma, Kenyans are opposing the housing levy for 3 main reasons. There are too many grey areas in the proposed bill. Politicians' bravado is overriding public views, and people have a trust deficit to the current regime due to lavish expenditure. And it's Zach, would these professionals employ their colleagues in their own projects? Are they behind the demolition plans by Kanjo of buildings in Dagoretti, which did not use these professionals? Well, that's a question of whether you'd employ your professionals for your own projects. Maybe you should take it.
Of course I would. Yeah, I would. Yeah, we do run projects for our own colleagues. In fact, it's the best way to do it because sometimes, a doctor cannot cure their own disease. So, I work in an office myself, and I have a partner in my office. So we design for him, and then he builds. So we're able to also cross-check for them. The only thing is that perhaps the costs then, because we already know what we want, and we know how to do this, quality might be a bit different. But yes, we would employ professionals. I have to bring on board a structural engineer. I cannot engineer things for myself, and a QS as well into the projects that we're doing.
Right. Yeah. And of course, you can send us your questions at Citizen TV Kenya. The hashtag to use is daybreak, but also you can text us via 22422. Let's talk about this plan by government. Again, a lot of details are still unknown. We are told that the framework or the regulations will come after this becomes law. That has been the promise, at least from PS Hinga and other government officials. But one wonders if money will be available. And I asked this question yesterday, some people are not happy online, that you have 9 billion shillings every month in a year that becomes 108 billion shillings. Why wouldn't the Public Works Department go ahead to implement these programs?
A very good question, and I align with you. For me, that is why I am talking about achieving this affordable housing, not in the market and profit model. And with 108 billion a year, government has an opportunity in their hands to execute this project outside the market model. I mean, there's been a lot of talk about Singapore, but if you look at the government in Singapore, they have removed housing from the public sector or from the private sector hands. It's purely with the government implementation. That is the kind of model that will achieve affordability, because you have money, then you begin. I don't know if government pays taxes to itself, but like in construction, they'll begin to cut off certain things that the private investor will not. And you can achieve that house almost at a non-profit. Remove the profit margins there, because the private guy will build in profit. If you have 108 billion as a government, you won't need profit. So begin to shave off those profits and build it almost at cost, because you're now achieving a constitutional right under Article 43(1)(b). You don't need profit. So we'll build it at cost and give people at cost. That, for me, you begin to talk about affordable housing to the people. But if you have the money, and if it doesn't make sense, as you say, you have money and you're waiting for someone to build, then you pay him. And that person has marked up. That person is in business. So 100%, 108 billion, 8 billion per month, let government, through public works, say, begin to do these non-profit housing programs.
The argument that they do not have capacity, is it true?
Public works?
Not at all.
I mean, if government has no capacity, who has?
No, but the private sector is here.
No, just first on the public works, that they do not have capacity to implement such kind of programs. Is it true?
No, it's not true. They have the capacity. And they can partner with private people or employ more when they have the resources.
Actually, what happens is that if there's a gap, for instance, within the public works department, then they do bring on board private sector. Yes, because some projects could be a little bit more specialized, so they bring on board private sector. But ideally, they have architects, engineers, construction project managers, landscape architects, interior designers. They have everyone you would want to have in a project to run them, and
including county development.
Exactly.
They are present everywhere in the country.
Because and the public works department is devolved across, they have offices across the country?
Yes, they do.
Okay, all right. Of course, we extended our invitation, or we attempted to reach the public works, but we got no response. They wanted them to be part of this conversation. But even as we move on all this, explain to me, I don't know who takes this. So you have a contractor. Ordinarily, contractors are businessmen. Right? So when you're making that choice of who to work with as a client, how do you do that? How do you procure that?
You invite them. You have a standardized document, what we call the tender document, in terms of the bills of quantities and drawings. You give them, then they showcase to you whether they can do it by giving you the price and how long it will take, and whether they have the experience and the mechanism in terms of equipment. And you're also allowed to confirm what they're saying they can. They show you what they've done, they take you to a few sites, and then if you're convinced, you get into a contractual agreement. And they've built in that price, their profit, their overhead, everything. So you're allowing to pay for that. Keeping in mind, if you do it yourself, you save up to 20–25% on that overhead and profit. Yes, they are earning.
So how do you empower the citizens to know how to do that? Because what you're explaining may be easy to you, not exactly to the citizens.
The procurement method, education and use of professionals. Again, like Florence have said, we are the ones who will give those advisory services when we are on board. Either of us, not all of us. You know, right? Yeah, you're guided so that you don't make mistakes. Yeah.
So I think what I can add to that is also, you know, NCA has categorized contractors into different categories, and those categories have been given value of work that they can do. So first of all, also you need to consider that you're doing 100 million ounce. What is the NCA category? Which NCA category of contractors are you going to invite? Because you want to invite NCA 8 contractor and you're trying to build an NCA 2 job. So that also will give you the first category of this is an NCA2 category of jobs. So you need to invite NCA2 and NCA1 contractors. So that also, because there's a law on that effect, that for this value of work, this is the category of contractors that can bid for it. Then you begin to do what QS is saying. Interrogation is important. In fact, for me, I will add, even for me, I always start with the methodology statement. How does the contractor intend to execute the work? I want to see that methodology. So you need to convince me that you have a method in place to execute the project. And then which projects have we done in the past? Yeah, I can see the price makes sense, but what projects have we done in the past? Can we see them? Can we visit them? This advice you only get when you have professional consultants on board.
So, I mean, how accessible are your services to citizens, especially in the rural areas? Like I told you, they will just reach out to a fundi that they know and tell them what they want. Yeah.
Our services are as reachable as they can be. We've tried as much as possible also to devolve ourselves. I think even when we say that maybe in the rural areas there could be less professionals there, but also it's just like you're saying, it's the uptake, it's the opportunity. We are also professionals, we are running careers. But what we've also tried to do is to work together with the counties and ask counties to also have in their staff establishment professionals, because if they have professionals there, then other people, it also attracts other people to also take up the services of professionals like architects, engineers, quantity surveyors, and so on and so forth. What you'll find in the counties, mostly they're focused on only maybe having planners in their foray, but ideally they should have all professionals as much as possible. We know that the public works has been devolved, and therefore that will also attract the same. One thing I know for sure is the fact that we have 47 county governments out there. All those county governments need professionals to some extent, even if it's just one engineer, one architect, one quantity surveyor, one planner, and so on and so forth. If you have that within every county, then you start to attract good work at the end of the day, and then you also attract other professionals to come, because when one professional is there, they say, okay, there's a bit of work here, can we have more people coming on board? And I think maybe I speak for the associations, is that we're also trying to spread our wings a little bit. AK has a branch in the coast, and now we're trying to do a western region kind of branch, so that we also have our professionals in those particular areas. And therefore that way we're also able to support them and continue to encourage them. The other thing we're also trying to do, and to use past experience, is when we're talking about the Jeo na Mjengo, we also don't just talk about it in English. Today we are speaking here very well. We try to go to local radio stations, including stations for different dialects and so forth, so that we're able to explain to them why they need a professional in the language that they understand as much as possible. And we go to the streets and discuss these things, because like you're saying, we don't need to live in this very nice iconic tower where we're just high-end professionals, but we need to go to the ground as well and to push this particular agenda to ensure that people know the need and the value for professionals in all ways, as much as possible.
Yeah, and when it comes to your rate cards, do they vary, or it's a blanket rate for every other client?
We have a standard, we are governed by law. It's regulated. If I tell you right now, people will say I'm expensive, but it's regulated. And this is not just the other day, it's in Cap 5 to 5 many years ago. They
Plus the market forces. Why are you charging so much when the other person next door will charge less? You lose the job.
And we've actually moved to a point where we're saying professionals should actually not compete on fees. We should be standard, so that the only difference is that if you like the work that this professional is doing, then you go with them, but they'll charge you the same thing. And that way, I think then it even reduces this issue of undercutting and many other challenges that maybe we do not want to discuss in this particular forum today.
Okay. I wish I knew what those are.
You invite us, then we will discuss
some. To just add on to the accessibility, I think Kenyans should make use of NCA, National Construction Authority presence all throughout the country. They have centers in all Huduma centers and counties. And as a regulator, their role is also to educate the public what you need to do to build this bit, to do that development. So consult.
Okay. Consult. Nation, there's feedback here. Someone says that you're saying that there's nothing like affordable housing because of market forces. But the land is free and most industrial goods are standardized. Therefore, prices come down, like doors, windows, etc. Maybe to unpack that question, when you're talking about affordability and affordable housing program, which you're saying that there are questions there, does it do anything to that if land is not necessarily being paid for when you're buying that house?
I mean, I will refer you to Ethiopia. Ethiopia has been doing one of the most ambitious social housing programs in any developing country. Since 2006, land in Ethiopia is state-owned. Look at what's happening in Ethiopia. All right? We don't have a land problem in this country. In my view, that's my view. I mean, we do not have a land problem in this country. The fact that you're going to give land, Shauri Moyo, you are still operating within the parameters of the market forces that are affecting the built environment. If steel prices went up like it went up 30% last year, does government have its own steel? It doesn't. If you impart cement prices through taxes, you're going to be faced. You don't have your own cement company, all right?
But if those taxes are on imported cement and clinker, does it spur growth of the local sector or it disadvantages the clients themselves?
Now, you see, there is a reason why we import. I don't think it is convenient for locals to import. And we import a lot of things. I think that's somewhere there's almost 70% of our construction stuff are imported. No one wants to import something that is cheaper locally. So we are importing it because the cost of production here, it's more expensive. So I can get it cheaper in China and bring it here and reduce my cost of construction. Now, if you force me to use that local, it is expensive. You're expiring growth, but you're increasing the cost of construction. It's guaranteed. It's not rocket science. When I'm importing steel from Vietnam, I'm importing it because the local steel is expensive. Now, if you tell me now that steel is now going to be more expensive, use the local, it means the cost of construction that I've been using is going to go up. I mean, it's that basic understanding of it. So yes, you may inspire local growth, but even to that extent, you're still increasing the fuel cost, which is going to increase the cost of production further. So, I mean, it doesn't make sense.
Right.
Yeah.
Jennifer, when you speak about you can reduce the cost of building as low as 25 or even 25,000 shillings per square meter or even further, and you're looking at the quality of finishes, and there's been this, I think it's been gaining popularity over time that people want tiles in their houses. How does it compare in the market between local and imported? And are we making progress to ensuring that what is local is good quality, yet still affordable?
What's local is still good quality. I guess that's why there's cabs to just confirm those quality, whatever, or what is being produced. I know for a fact, like tile is being produced somewhere in Kenya, in Kisumu. And they're regulated, they must meet certain standards. And they know they're coming to a market where there's a China center, you know, where all these materials are there. They must compete with that. Therefore, the quality must not be compromised.
What is the experience, Nation?
Look, we have issues with some of our local production. I mean, those are facts, yeah? You know, we are a country that is work in progress. We can never forget that we have ethics deficit in some areas. We are suffering from those things. So things will slip. We have low quality steel in this market. We have low quality paint locally. We have a lot of fake materials in this construction sector as we speak with you today. We face them on site every day. Yeah, you want test and all those things. There's a lot of backdoor materials, and that is affecting the industry. So yes, we want to inspire local growth. My biggest concern, still some, and as I raised, is the cost of production. I come from the western part of Kenya. Go to those areas. Which tile is in most hardwares? They're the Ugandan tiles.
They're better quality?
It's cheaper. Way cheaper.
Quality-wise?
Quality-wise is good.
And that's what we are saying.
Way cheaper. That's what I'm telling you.
Quality can be produced in this country, in this Africa, so let's not be negative.
Yeah, so let's, that's why for me, I'm very concerned with that construction material import cost, because our cost of construction is already somewhere here. It's already high. If you force us with the local materials, they're expensive. And only few produce. I saw somewhere that clinker is now going to be produced by 2 cement farms. So the rest must buy from them. those are the concerns I have. Why don't we first increase that capacity to where it's supposed to be, then remove the importation stuff?
You know, I'm just wondering if Kenyans are preferring imported tiles, for instance, that you say from Uganda, cheaper yet still quality. And I understand there's the cost component, cost of production itself, but are our manufacturers listening and watching what is happening in the market so that they can find ways at least of improving the quality?
I mean,
I think they do.
Yeah.
Because we've got, I mean, if you take the tile, for instance, we have production from Twyfords. They have a factory. We have Ramoda that came into the market recently. We have Surge. They have factories here. They do produce quality tile. What we're trying to say is that the cost of production is so high that to sell it at a, you know, because they are there to make, it's a business, to sell it at a
competitive rate.
Competitive rate becomes very difficult. So that's what the government should be looking at. The chain, the chain of production, which is important in there, and the biggest cost, as we all know, is the cost of electricity. Yeah, it's the cost of electricity. If you look at some of the you know, areas where people are you know, spending a lot of money, it's basically just power. Energy at the end of the day. Yet every other day, I think this year the cost of energy has literally doubled. Yeah. So how do we expect that we will lower the cost of production, be able to sell it competitively, and yet again we're also saying when you import, we are now increasing the tax. So at the end of the day, everything you have in the market will be expensive. Then what happens? Everything in terms of cost of production, of construction, then goes up. Prices go up. You're talking about a tile. We've not talked about cement. We've not talked about paint, and so on and so forth.
And in that spectre, you're trying to achieve affordable housing.
It's not possible. Yeah, it's not. So there's, I think and that's what we're saying. There's a role of government is to create an enabling environment for housing. It is that environment, and they have the instruments. They are the ones who can lower tax. Right now, they're increasing tax, and then they're saying affordable housing. So if a house is going for, you know, a one bedroom for 1.35, I can assure you, by the time we're finishing to build in the next 1 or 2 years, they'll be going for 2 million for sure. So how does that become affordable? It's not possible. So it's the role of government to actually create an enabling environment, and that taxation and even just the cost of production and those factors of production, starting with energy, need to come down for us to achieve affordable housing. Yeah.
But Sam,
yes,
let's just revisit the land issue, which Nation has contributed ably. Is it going to reduce costs of, improve the affordability of this housing? I think it will, because one, the contribution of land to any project, especially this high-rise one, will be anything between 5 to 10%. If that is given to you, that reduces costs. Secondly, land is very emotionally owned in this country. Every tract of land you see that is attractive will always have inheritance issue. A brother who doesn't sell, a mother who said, you know, no one should touch that land, things like that. Therefore, that land is never accessible for development. Then thirdly, the land the government has through the various agencies is very strategic. You'll find a piece of land where they're giving a project to be done in Shorimoyo, for example, has infrastructure, is near to town, is going to convert the project on that piece of land to be very marketable. Right. You know, as opposed to you going to put up a building in Kajiado. Who will live there today? No one. But immediately, Shorimoyo people are waiting to live there because it's ready for market.
Interesting. And still, because yes, affordable housing, but also the rest, when it comes to areas that especially people are building to sell, is there any way of regulating that price? Because here we can sit and agree that this is the average cost. This is the estimate cost that might have taken to put up this structure. But then the selling price, who determines that?
Oh, it's regulated.
It's the market.
No. The affordable houses and the social housing are capped by the Ministry of Public Works.
I think it's 2.5 M.
No, there are many of them, from 1 bedroom all the way to 3 bedroom. They'll start from 1 million to the highest of a 3 bedroom is 6 million. that's very affordable. And we're talking about houses within the proximity of Nairobi. Keeping in mind Kilimani, for example, a similar 3-bedroom house would be going for now 12 to 15 million. Therefore, if you're getting a 6 million and it is in Isili, I think everyone is going to grab a house there. Yeah. Isn't it? Yeah. There are pluses of this program.
What the government has done is for you to call your project affordable housing, those are the rates must follow. So it's regulated. And I think then it also unlocks the opportunity for private developers to maybe grow onto some subsidies that the government had put in place in the previous Bomayango project, where you could get some tax exemption on a few things just because you're building affordable housing. And that is, for me, that we're starting to touch on creating that enabling environment when the government intervenes in terms of making sure that it's not a market-driven pricing, it's actually driven by the government in terms of capping it and classifying what it is that an affordable housing is. I think I just want to add onto the issue of land by saying that, yes, we have so much attractive land and so on and so forth, and a lot of it is probably outside of Nairobi. But I think also the issue of connectivity and mobility is a key thing. People should be able to access their place of work quite easily. And that mobility is actually something that the government needs to look into in terms of public transport, non-motorist transportation, and so on and so forth. The kind of areas that they do. Slowly by slowly, then we'll be touching onto the planning issues around housing. And therefore, that's why we want to say that housing is not the 4 walls. It's not this construction we see here, the building. It's bigger and it's larger than what we are seeing. And there's a much, much bigger conversation that needs to take place around the issue of housing. So that will bring down that cost.
And Nation, you wanted to say something?
Yes, I think the affordable housing, there are caps to the housings, but in the private sector is capitalism. It's willing buyer, willing seller. So if you can get more money from you in sales, the better. But I think the housing market is normalizing. If you look at it, it's not like the boom area where it was what I would call a seller's market. I think it's become a buyer's market. The competition has become stiff. As much as possible, but people keep wondering why the cost of houses are not coming down. It's because the cost of construction is high. What are you going to do? So yes, there's competition, but people are in business. So if I work out my components in a feasibility study, put my land cost and all those things, I still have to make some margin that makes sense in the real estate. That's why that cost of the housing prices, even during COVID times, people wanted it to drop, but it was not dropping. Our cost of construction is quite high.
The reason why I'm asking that question is because you're faced with the option of, do you buy or do you build? And if you're to build, you then buy land, then build. And when you're looking at all those, of course, there are those advantages that you might end up with a standalone structure versus being on the 18th floor of a certain building. But how do you make that decision?
To buy or to build? Very interesting. Do you want to live in Kiserian alone with no water, with no sewage, or you buy in Shauri Moyo where all those services are, are available, and there are schools and there are hospitals and all that. So convenience becomes a key component in making that decision. Yes, you may save 1 or 2 things, but the discomfort levels are not really,
I think for me, there are three considerations to make when you want to build or buy a house. There are 3 things that you need to carefully interrogate and help you decide. Number 1 is cost. How much do you have to buy, or for this purpose of housing? How much do you have? Because that alone will eliminate you in certain areas. Number 2 is location. Where do you want to stay? If you want to stay in the suburbs of this city, probably you have to just buy, because land cost alone is quite ridiculous. And number 3, which is people don't forget, most Kenyans, is time. If you're going to build a house, you're going to have tears, sweat, and blood. You have to be available. If you're the busy chap, please buy a house, because you'll be building 2 houses with the fundi, his and yours, because you're not available. So for me, those are 3 considerations.
Even with you guys, with your profession?
No, with us, you are safe. But you see, most Kenyans, as we are in this process of education, still think we are expensive, so they'll want to build with the fundi. And then they are so busy that they want to go to that site once in 2 weeks for example, you'll be in problems. So those three considerations will better guide you. How much do you have to spend? Where do you want to stay? And your availability.
Interesting. What do you want to say about that?
Yeah, I think that Nation has touched on the important factors at the end of the day, because it's actually a choice you make. You want to live conveniently, then you live within, you can buy a house within the CBD or at least areas that are adjacent to the central business district. But if you want to live far, you know, there's this notion Kenyans have that I want a little bit of grass outside my house. So a lot of them then would opt to build a house. But unfortunately, when they're building that house, it's so far away. They have to figure out how much time they'll spend, first of all, in terms of traffic, to get into the city, maybe their place of work, and to move around. You have to consider many things.
Security.
Location. Location is very key, because then it allows you then to access schools for your children, you know, commercial areas for shopping, and so on and so forth. So I think he's touched on it, and it's a choice. At the end of the day, it's a choice. But let me tell you, let me just bring a question here, is do we really have to own houses?
No.
We can rent. We can rent houses. And it's okay to rent a house. In fact, the government housing, is the good housing that they have near the CBD is rented by civil servants. And to me, that is the provision of housing that we need to think about. Maybe we need to stop having this notion of I have to own a home. We can rent. And it's very possible that if we rent, literally the government can make back its money with the money that is the rent money they collect, and build even many more. So there's a notion.
How about this cultural notion that I want to have a place of my own?
Then build up country.
You know, Sam, I mean, look at Europe. The poorest countries have the highest housing capacity. The poorest countries, the Albania, the Romania, 96, 98% people own houses. But look at some of those modern houses, countries like Switzerland, number 3 in growth index. Only 42% own houses. We have a fixation in housing in this country. And yet, even the Article 43(1)(b), the right, it's a right to housing, not a right to ownership. So sometimes we can go long-term rents. I've always said these things. The Nordics are doing 30-year long-term rents. What is this fixation that we need to own houses? Why can't we build houses and give people 30-year rent periods instead of ownership? Florence is right. We just have a problem. We need to change some of these things.
The notion, the perception must change. Because people never realize that when you own a house, a 10 million house, it will take you up to 15 years to pay back the house. And more than that if it's a mortgage. Therefore, all your life, all you're doing is paying that house, then you die, or you outlive the house. Whereas if you rent, you have the flexibility of managing your money, and you can move around as need arises. People who owned homes in the Kitengelas and the Kiserians a while back, when the kids were smaller, had to move back to the CBD because the kids now are in college and they can't do the commutes. So,
Interesting. But then again, the government is talking about rent to buy. Kenyans, including one who is in the gallery, is saying that you buy a house or you build one because one day you might be jobless. Where will you go? Will you afford the rent?
Well, where will you go?
For me, at that time, you're dealing with an income issue. I mean, you can also buy the house through mortgage and you need to pay mortgage. It doesn't. You know?
No, but it is a valid question. I mean, it's a valid point. We must not dismiss. There are those who build for security. Let them build. But they also know that it is not the best economic decision they're making. When they have the income issue, like Nation is saying, then they can't even service that house. They won't pay power. They won't pay security. You know,
Interesting. Of course, many questions that Kenyans still have. Let's take a look at the feedback that is coming to us at Citizen TV Kenya. Sam Gituko, the hashtag to use is daybreak, on what you're thinking this morning. Babu Michael, you're saying that with the mushrooming of buildings in Nairobi now, are the building organizations advising the county government of congestion and lack of important social amenities? That goes to physical planning. Brian Chemwa, the cost of building includes expenses beyond construction, such as permits, architectural design, engineering, site preparation, landscaping, interior finishes, and furniture. Can economic factors such as inflation influence construction costs over time? You can note this down, then you can quickly respond to them as we wind up. Okelo Mwalimu, government should forget about construction of houses and create conducive environment for private investors to create more housing units by reducing cost of fuel, improving infrastructure, and cheap loans. Rather than getting to private spaces, let the government address food security. Ras Bashir, my big question, what is the role of the National Housing Corporation as far as this housing fund is concerned? You say the housing fund money is not to build housing, but to mitigate risks for the private sector. How will this work? Asking about NHC. Godi Baraza, Kenyans could be treating this housing levy with, quote, if the deal is too good, think twice, end of quote, kind of notion. Why would one vehemently oppose an initiative as good as this? More credible information must be availed to the public. All right. Charles Ward Rosie, the central and county governments should ensure that within their areas of jurisdictions, construct cheap and affordable houses for its constituents. Leaving low-income earners at the mercy of private developers is very expensive. A budget should be provided for the same. All right. And Panther African, considering the supposition of including consultants in the construction projects, what could we equal that to in terms of creating land value in the long term? Would that accelerate homogeneous development in the country? Kizungu kubwa this morning. And that was the last one. Maybe quick feedback from you, some of the questions raised there, including that on the role of NHC, this housing levy. Who wants to go first?
Sorry.
Jennifer.
Yes, the government, does it stop building houses and create an enabling environment? No, they do both. It's their role. Kenyans must be housed, and it doesn't take just one methodology to have that delivered. So they need to just keep improving what they're doing. Yeah.
Okay, Nation?
I think NHC, that's some of the queries some of us have been having. Why some of this fund was not domiciled at National Housing Corporation? I think that is something the public could have really resonated with, because this is an existing institution. So I would have actually let NHC start to spearhead some of these things, because they have a mandate. It's already established. You're not starting something afresh. It will have solved quite a lot. Someone has talked about the local governments building houses. I actually had a proposal some times back, and I said, why can't we amend the CDF Act? Why can't we amend the CDF Act and put a caveat that 30% of it goes to affordable housing in the or social housing in every constituency as a low-hanging fruit instead of housing levy? I had that proposal.
It's already not enough for what it's supposed to be doing.
Well, it won't be enough, but perception is everything. Even if you took 10%, every village, every town in every constituency has a housing problem. So you're trying to address as I saw Chief Economist say, this is a top government agenda. You have the numbers in Parliament. Why can't this take the 10% of every CDF? Whether it builds 2 houses, social housing, whatever it is, you are achieving affordable housing. We did that with the county government acts. I think 30-35% goes to development. Why can't we consider some of these things so that you begin to address housing issues, not only in Nairobi, you're addressing it across the country?
Okay, all right. Your final word, Florence.
I think I'll take the issue on the supposition of consultants. Actually, it is not a supposition. It is in law that you're supposed to use consultants, because it's just like you cannot treat yourself. A doctor, you need a doctor at the end of the day. So it's not a supposition. I think they should look at it as more of engaging professionals at the end of the day. And I think, as you talk about land value, then we are the only ones who can actually look at your housing, or let's just say your project, from the eyes of a professional, and be able to give you highest return on investment for the land which you have purchased or bought at the end of the day. And I think it will increase the the value of the land that people have, as opposed to having it, a quirk being there, I can assure you, somebody who's buying a piece of land, let's say in Kilimani or Kileleshwa, will not just sit back and let anybody build for them. They'll make sure that they have professionals on board, and that will unlock a higher land value for them at the end of the day. So let's look at it as more of engaging professionals. We're willing to listen, we're willing to talk. We are at the point where we really just want to standardize and not really have competition among fees, in terms of fees for professionals, but just make sure that what people are competing on is more of the value that you bring to the project for the client.
Interesting. And I have to thank you all for making time to have this conversation. And it continues because there are many questions that people still have. Because beyond this is how then do you identify people who are genuine? And that's why it becomes easier for people to say that Fundi Fulani built for Fulani Fulani, and therefore they can come and replicate what they did there. But clearly you can hear the importance of professionals in your investment, because really it is investment. And that has been Florence Nyole, President of Architectural Association of Kenya, Nation Okoa, Construction Project Manager, but also previously working with the Association of Construction Managers of Kenya, and Jennifer Musimi, the President of the Institute of Quantity Surveyors of Kenya. Maybe that friend of ours who went ahead to say what I said on air can now say that I said it correctly. Thank you all for making time for us to have this conversation. My name is Sam Gituku. See you some other time.